Alrighty, so I want to address a common proof text that a lot of people will use to basically teach the doctrines of Calvinism about how God only wants certain people to be saved and that there's other people that he's not interested in saving them, he's not going to save them. There's no hope for these people, like there's nothing that they can do whatsoever. Basically, their fate is sealed, as it were. And so, one verse that people like to use in order to support the doctrines of Calvinism, it's John chapter 6 and verse 44. So let's go ahead and read that together. It says in John 6:44, "No man can come to me except the Father which hath sent me draw him, and I will raise him up at the last day." So basically, what this verse is getting at least from the Calvinist perspective, is that they're basically saying that, see, it's very clear from that verse that God is not drawing everyone to salvation. No one can come to the Father unless the Father is drawing that person to Jesus Christ. And so basically, the idea here is that, obviously the Father is drawing some people to Christ, right? Because some people do in fact get saved. However, not everyone is being drawn by the Father, and so that's essentially what they're reading into that verse. Okay. But what's interesting is that we just have to read a little bit further into the Gospel of John. If we just simply skim over to John chapter 12, what we start to realize pretty quickly is that the Bible actually teaches that God draws everyone to salvation, right? And again, obviously, it's not just this verse alone, but there's other verses we could turn to where the Bible says that he will have all men to be saved and to come unto the knowledge of the truth. He gave himself a ransom for all to be testified in due time. The Bible says that the grace of God that bringeth salvation hath appeared to all men, right? And so there are verses that do teach that, yeah, obviously you can't come to Christ unless the Father is drawing you. But what the Bible is teaching is that everyone is actually being drawn to Jesus Christ. Because if you look at John 12 in verse 32, it says, "And I, if I be lifted up from the earth, will draw all men unto me." So who is being drawn to Jesus Christ? It says all men are being drawn unto Jesus Christ. Okay. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean that everyone will in fact get saved, right? Because it's one thing to draw the horse to water, but then it's another thing to actually have the horse actually drink from that water, right? So just because people are being drawn to the Father, he's trying to essentially, bring them to himself, like, hey, come to salvation, come believe in me, look unto me all the ends of the world and be ye saved, right? So obviously God is imploring with the unsaved world to believe in him, right? But at the end of the day, it's up to them to actually believe in the gospel, to actually trust Christ and receive salvation, okay? So if you just simply go all the way over to John chapter 12, the Bible tells us that God is drawing all men unto himself. And so, obviously, no one can come to him except the Father draws him, right? Because the idea is that the Father and the Son, they're working together, they cooperate, and ultimately the work of salvation being done when people come to Christ and believe in him. Obviously, it's the Father and the Son doing these things together. And so, obviously, the Son is the one that saves us, but then it's the Father that draws people to the Son. And so that's essentially what's being explained there. But the idea is that it's not that God only draws some people. The Bible says he draws all men unto himself. And so this doctrine of unconditional election is false, and it's not biblical whatsoever.